Today we welcome Dave Goodmark, VP of Sales at Wiz.
You could be a not great leader and have amazing people and do okay. And you could be the best leader on the planet Earth and have really bad people and you're going to be in trouble.
In this episode, we talk about mentorship.
It doesn't matter how little you think someone might know about what they're trying to teach you. If you could try to take one thing away from these interactions and figure out how do you learn from your mistakes, what risks are worth taking, what risks are not worth taking.
We talk about reciprocal accountability.
When you do treat each other almost like you are siblings and you can take shots at each other, it actually kind of creates a welcoming environment and atmosphere, which only helps us get towards the mission faster when we're working and when we're building.
And how the decisions that he's made to follow the right leaders has propelled him to the success that he's enjoying right now. This is his playbook. This episode is sponsored by PGAI and Seller. Go and discover how these solutions can help amplify your sales execution. Check out the descriptions below. Welcome to Hunters and Unicorns. I'm Simon Kutis and I'm joined by my co-host, Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And it's with great pleasure that we introduce Dave Goodmark. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
What do you think of his announcement voice?
I think it's a great announcer voice.
He's been practicing
I've been working on it.
He's got a game show audition
I think you
coming
should
up.
try that out more often, like out in the public, not just on the pod.
I've been trying, but the looks that I've been getting, it's not quite working out. By way of an introduction, you are VP Americas at Wiz.
That's correct.
I mean, your story and your journey is a truly remarkable journey. And we're so excited to be telling your story today because actually, as we start to really unpack your journey, through your career, there are so many important learnings about how you got to where you've got to today. But for the start of the show, just want to really start from the beginning. How did it all begin for you?
When I went to college, I had a cousin who had put herself through college and then law school, and she went on to be a lawyer at a really big firm and a partner. And not growing up super, upper class and seeing what that lifestyle could afford, I said, I'm going to go be a lawyer and I'm going to go be like Cousin Barbara. So I took a business major with a concentration in law, and I was going to go to law school. Somewhere along the way, I took a professional selling class, and that fulfilled part of the law minor because it was all about communication. And I think we'll probably talk a lot today about the theme of mentorship and getting good advice from people that know more than you know based on where you are in your life. I had a professor who convinced me that I should go into sales. And if I wanted to be a lawyer, I could utilize a lot of the same skill sets in sales. I could not go to school for another 2-3 years, which was appealing to me. And I could actually make as much, if not more money doing it. So he got me on the sales track. He started taking me and some other students to sales competitions, which had just become a thing. Now they've blown up around kind of the local area, competing in like mock role plays against other universities. And that led me to my first job in sales, which was actually at a Johnson & Johnson company in their leadership development program. That story in itself is interesting. I was at a sales competition. There was a company there. There's a J&J company. They were based in California. I had never traveled further west than Indiana in the U.S. This company was in California. I thought, what would be cooler than graduating from college and going and moving to California? I walked up to the table. I had my elevator pitch all ready to go. And the hiring manager said, we pre-screened all of the candidates. Your resume didn't make the cut, so we have no interview spots for you this week. And I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. Here's why I think I'd be a good candidate. He goes, well, I appreciate you sharing, but I just don't have time. So my next question was, what time's your first interview tomorrow? And he said, I'm 8 to 8 all day. So I looked at him. I said, okay. I go, what are you doing for breakfast? So we met at 7 o'clock in the morning the next day, and the rest was kind of history. But that's how the whole thing got started. So some people that were willing to take a shot, some people who gave me good advice that I didn't even know about. So that's kind of the start to the whole thing.
It is actually a recurring theme in your journey, as you said, the kind of idea of mentorship. So just take us forward to your entry into software sales.
Yeah, so it's similar. I was with J&J. I'd gone through the program at Johnson & Johnson. I actually got moved out into the field. I was living in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, which was actually really difficult as someone a year and a half out of college, fully remote sales job, driving around to all of the secluded areas of northern Ohio and Michigan, selling to really small healthcare centers and hospitals. A lot of windshield time. There were days that I ended my day 7 hours from where I started my day, and I had to drive all the way back. And someone who was on my team at the time, 25 years in the industry, he said, "Why are you in medical device sales? Based on the way the world is going, you should really be in technology sales." And I said, "What is technology sales?" I really didn't even know. And he told me that, and I won't use his name because of the story, he was actually cold calling for software companies from 8 to 10 and from 4 to 6 because he could do all of his work and be the top rep basically at the company between the hours of 10 and 2 o'clock. And he started telling me about like software sales and SaaS and all this stuff that he was doing. I had always wanted to ultimately spend some time and live in New York City. So moving back there was enticing to me. And that's ultimately how I found ClearSlide. I just Googled, software startups in New York. ClearSlide was just opening an office there. I took, kind of some blind advice from someone that had 25 years of experience on me. And that's how the whole thing kind of started.
And was that where you met Carlos? Was Carlos the CRO?
Carlos was the CRO when I started, and JP was running the office in New York. But going back to the story we'll talk a lot about how fortunate I've been to learn from some of the very best and also see a whole lot of different styles and philosophies out of the same playbook. That was my first exposure to Carlos and to JP, although I did not directly work for them. Being in the office in New York, seeing how they operated,
It's an incredible story, and obviously shortly after that, moving on to App Dynamics, really, and the story there in itself, I think, is one of huge interest. But I think it also again shares a lot of learnings from that in itself. So talk us through to how you transitioned from ClearSlide into App Dynamics.
Yeah, definitely, and again, just on the theme of like mentorship and really good people that made investments. My first leader at ClearSlide was a guy by the name of Zach Legat. I don't know if you know Zach, but Zach was also at Mongo at some other places.
Right.
And he had moved from California to New York to take the role. And kind of from the interview process, he had talked about, hey, if you can go do these things and I can help you develop in these areas. Because remember, I'd never sold a product where you actually needed a signature on a dotted line. That wasn't what I was doing. He was like, this could be your path. This is what I want to do in my career. And he really took a vested interest. Which was awesome, and again, something he really didn't have to do, having not known me outside of the interview process and getting together a few times. So Zach ultimately did get promoted. He moved back out to California, which allowed me to take my first leadership role, which there's a funny story in that because I got set up for that job. I had a conversation with one of the sales leaders at the time. This was after Carlos left. And he was walking me through how sometime you have to do the job that you want while you're still doing the job that you're in. And sometimes it actually comes with more work and no extra money. And I told him, that sounds great. I would love, an opportunity. And this was a hypothetical. 3 days later, he told me that Zach had got promoted, and great news. I have an opportunity to go, do the next job in the role that I'm in for, no more. But that was fortunate. So at ClearSlide, I saw 2 or 3 different roles in my 4 years there. It's also where I met Mike in the transition to App Dynamics. So Mike actually hired the top rep off my team. And it was a humbling moment. It was also, as leaders, we remember the ones that surprise us.
Yeah.
And it's humbling. You learn from it. Your first reaction, or at least my first reaction, probably was not something I'm super proud of. And you want to be outwardly mad at the person who's leaving and the person who's taking them. But the reality is there were probably a number of things that we could have done better to keep that. But shortly after that whole ordeal, Mike reached out to me on LinkedIn because he's Mike, and he was gloating. And he said, "Hey,"
and we saw the message of this.
It is true. You've seen the message. So Mike reached out and he said, "Hey, I heard we should talk." And I basically said, I'm happy to talk to you, but we have nothing to talk about, I think is the summary of the message that I sent back.
You've not actually messaged since, by the way. There's no message history after that point.
It's true. Maybe I'll go send him a LinkedIn message after this. We'll get it restarted. So Mike reached out, and I went to Harmon, who had actually left to go work for Mike. And I said, hey, I really don't like this guy. What's his deal? Why is he doing this? And Harmon said he asked for other people who might be good. Harmon walked me through the concept of the playbook and becoming consciously competent at things and being able to go build and run your business in a way that's repeatable and scalable. As an individual contributor, building the framework where you can be consciously competent enough that you could actually go teach other people, which actually was not a skill at the time I had, even though I was in a leadership role. I kind of called it, like hold my beer leadership was all I had because I didn't really know why I was getting the outcome I was getting. So I took the meeting with Mike, and it was a super awkward breakfast meeting where we both showed up 20 minutes early. We didn't know each other. We didn't have each other's phone numbers, and we sat on opposite ends of the restaurant. We both ordered each other a coffee. And we both proceeded to reach out to each other through email and say, where are you? I think I said, I'm at the low top on the left-hand side when you walk in, to which he emailed me back. I'm at the high top across from you, and I could probably find the email. I bet you it is somewhere. And we proceeded to stare across the restaurant at each other to see who would move. He won. So I walked over.
He is Mike.
Yeah, it's like I said, there are good earnest meetings, and a breakfast meeting, selling something super high level and fluffy is a great Mike meeting.
It started.
So we get to the end of the breakfast, and Mike spent the whole time telling me how he's not trying to recruit me and all of this, kind of like a true, earnest sales pitch, and it's a good one. He walked me through all the things they were doing, all the opportunity there was to learn and to grow and get developed and to make money. But he wasn't recruiting me. He was just walking me through all the things that were going on there. If I happened to know anyone in New York, because he had just moved to New York from California. And at the end of the breakfast, again, probably not one of my finer moments or better decisions, I thought, hey, this guy just told me he would be interested in me working here. He took the top rep off my team. What a great time to say, hey, thank you. This has been educational. I'll think about it. So that's how we left breakfast. We walked out of our super awkward breakfast. And then I started going on some job interviews because the company wasn't growing as fast. Some of the folks had already moved on from ClearSlide. So I'm going through the process to interview, and I just didn't have the network where there was anything that I was looking at that I was really excited by, where I could see it, being something where, the impact that you could have on the company, the way the company was going to grow, was going to pace at a rate that kind of worked out. So it almost felt like coming back to the situation that I was trying to leave. So at that point, I said I have to call Ernest. However, people don't say no to Mike very often. And I said, this has been educational. Let me think about it. So Mike refused to return phone calls, text messages, emails. I called Harmon. Harmon said, I don't know what to tell you. Like you had your opportunity and you chose to tell him it's been educational. So it just so happened, and fate is a funny thing, that I was meeting Harmon and some other friends in New York to watch the Warriors play the Cavs in the NBA Finals. They were all at a bar in Manhattan. I was in the office till about 8, 9 o'clock at night. I leave the office. I meet them to watch the game. I walk into the bar. I put my bag down, and I go to sit down, and they have these low, like brown benches, kind of like this but lower. And I go to sit on the bench, and it was someone's bag. And I fall over, and I'm laying starfish in the middle of a bar restaurant at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday in New York. And who is laughing hysterically with his hand out, standing over me than Ernest. And there's more to the story, but that's kind of, I think, enough. And
it's really interesting because I think, and we're definitely going to get into this, but, even now, and in the stories we spoke about, in the past and last night, you always seem to run towards things that most people would run away from. But what is it at that point? Like at that point, as I said, there was no ego there. It was a case of saying, do you know what? I realize I've made not necessarily the wrong decision, but at the same time, there's probably a better decision I could have made here right now. But why are you running back towards that? What was the...
Yeah, I honestly give a lot of credit to my parents and how I was raised. So I was definitely raised through the lens of you can do whatever you want and you can make any decision you want, but decisions have consequences and consequences are real and that's your choosing and doing. So that's one piece of it. I think the second piece of it is even like growing up playing baseball, like the advice that I always got from my parents and my dad especially was it doesn't matter how little you think someone might know about what they're trying to teach you, and they might be wrong about 1,000 things. If you could try to take one thing away from these interactions. So I think that has given me a good ability to look at the decisions that I'm making, to look at opportunities, and figure out how do you learn from your mistakes, what risks are worth taking, what risks are not worth taking. I also think a lot of it comes back to the mentor side of, asking people who have more experience than you, who have been around longer than you, who have done it. This is what I'm thinking. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? And sometimes it's someone who is more senior than you've ever been. Sometimes it's someone who's the same level or maybe even earlier in career. You take kind of all these different, opinions and thoughts, and then ultimately you're responsible for what you do. And if you screw up, you learn from it and you go correct it and you don't do it again. And I've also learned a lot from mistakes in my life because I sure make a lot of mistakes.
This episode is sponsored by Seller. Seller provides a white glove treatment to every complex deal with their bespoke system, whilst ensuring you get the most value from your CRM for everyday selling. So you were previously a leader, first line leader, and you actually joined AppD as an IC, right?
Yep.
So you took a step back. What were you thinking at that time?
It was interesting. So that interview process at AppD was crazy. It was 3 months. I think I actually have a engagement timeline similar to what we would do with customers from that interview process. And I think I met with like 15 people. It was 3 or 4 months. I did something like 45 meetings, and I was still doing the job at ClearSlide. I got pneumonia while I was interviewing. Mike thought I disappeared for a week and a half, but I really was just super sick. But through that process, getting to talk to people like the Jake Younts of the world, getting to talk to obviously Mike and people like Trevor, and I'm definitely missing people there, and hearing their perspective on it, like what your title is doesn't matter. So you've done this to this point in your career, and that's great, and you've had success. But when you look at how the team at App Dynamics ran and operated versus anything I had ever done in my life, it was leaps and bounds ahead of it. So nothing is promised, but come in, actually build a skill set that teaches you how to do something to the point where you are consciously understanding of it, and you can go coach it and get promoted if you want to, or keep selling if you want. But it could actually be an accelerant to the career instead of a detriment, because if I don't have that skill set, ultimately you'd hit a ceiling, or you wouldn't end up at the companies or in the industries that you'd want to be in. So again, that comes back to a lot of really good advice from a lot of people, and willingness to take the risk. And it's interesting because I've had this conversation now on the other side a lot where, we're trying to hire someone, or you have someone looking to get promoted, and they're looking ahead to the next thing. And that is also what I did originally when the idea was go back to be a seller. Why would I want to do that, right? I'm already a leader. But understanding the impact that had on not just my career, but my skill set what I can now do and how I can help my team and help other people be successful. It's a conversation that I've had many and many a time since then.
Yeah. And this is the start of this theme, right? And I think it'd be really, really helpful if you can, continue to tell your story from App Dynamics and to keep continuing taking us up to present day, because as I said, there's so much to learn from your story. So at that point at App Dynamics, an IC, taking on your first role within a Playbook organization. Continue there and tell us about your career progression from there.
So App Dynamics took me to California, actually. So I moved across the country for the job. I guess like my whole life is a funny story. There's a funny story in that.
There is a really funny story.
There's a funny story in that as well. The short version of that story is I went through that whole interview process. I got to the end of the interview process, and Mike didn't have the headcount to hire for 2 or 3 months. As part of that interview process, I'd met Trevor Mallon, who still actually works with us at Wiz. And when Trevor found out that Mike needed 2 or 3 months to hire someone, when I called him, he told me that he and Mike had this great idea that I should actually move to California and work for Trevor. He was just going to get promoted to be a leader for the first time. He was trying to build Southern California. So I told him that was a great idea. And then I called Mike and I said, Trevor told me your guys' idea. And Mike had no idea that
They had an idea.
that was it. So that's a funny story in itself. But I moved out west, take an IC job. It was hard. I mean, again, it's funny. I talked about all the advice that I did follow. I remember, I think it was Jake during the interview process. He was like, you're crazy. Like, new industry, new type of product, because I never really sold like a super technical product, new buying center, new market where you know anyone. Because usually when you change jobs, you want to change like one thing or two things. So it was really hard. And in the first 6, 8 months were a struggle. We talk about the trough of disillusionment, where you kind of hit that 6-7 month mark when you come into a company as a rep, especially when you're learning this playbook, and you feel like you're insane because you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you're working harder than you've ever worked, and you're not seeing the results. And I was definitely there. But again, I was surrounded by amazing people. So, having the opportunity, to work for Trevor, having the opportunity to have Parm on the West Coast, who's been a great mentor and always given me great advice and guidance and a good kick in the butt too when it's needed. Trevor rolled into Zach Sikora at that time. So I really had an opportunity to learn on the West Coast from a ton of really good people, good coaching, good advice, kind of the roll up the sleeves, get in the trenches with the team type world that we all still live in, but is not super common outside of the world that we all live in. And I got to a point where I kind of figured it out. And I was 18 months in, and I was at my number for the year, set up to have a huge, second half of the year. I could see a really big W-2. And on New Year's Day, my phone rang, and it was Mike. And he called to wish me a Happy New Year, to which I immediately responded, "What do you want?" And he goes, "I can't call a friend and wish him a Happy New Year." I go, "No, you would text me that, but you probably wouldn't even do that." So I guess something I missed, Mike and I did one-on-ones every week for 18 months, but I had nothing to do with this number. So like you talk about like, why trust someone? Why follow them? Why, like, that investment is crazy. Most people wouldn't do it. You talk about like playing the long game of like, what does a chessboard look like and where would the pieces fall and what will we do? So ultimately that call was, there was a leadership role on the East Coast at AppD that didn't report to Mike. And he wanted me to take it because it would give me the opportunity to learn from Dan Weinberg, Phil Cody, Spencer Tuttle, and then Schmitty, right, was above all of them. So
there's no benefit at all to Mike in this?
Not in the short term.
There's a long-term plan here.
At this point,
Yeah.
so up until this point, let's just kind of recap. So for 18 months, you're having weekly one-to-ones.
Yep.
You're in a completely different part of the country, and then he rings you up to say you should take this.
Yep.
Yeah. but also what you were taking. It was the role itself as well, which is very different to the role that you were doing, right?
The team was an experiment at post-acquisition of Cisco. It was 5 reps, all brand new to solve their shells. Actually, very good, right? A lot of those people have been very successful. But it was basically like very experimental. I think the team had closed maybe $200K in the first 6 months of the year, and their leader had just jumped and taken a different role inside the company. So yes, I was not walking away from I can see line of sight to 200, 250% of my number to, hey, this is going to be a glamorous job.
Yeah. And
so why did you take it? So what was the role and what did?
Yeah, so I think to your point about there's no benefit to Mike, and not to take anything away from him, he's a great person, but at that point when you looked at where we were as part of Cisco, where AppD was post-acquisition, Mike was thinking about this will come to an end and we will go somewhere. And I would like to hire Dave as a leader when that happens. And what a better way than to get him exposure to this experience, to this leadership team. Honestly, to have to build something from scratch. So I could say it was an experiment. There were really great people on that team, and there was a good opportunity. And we really got to go build that thing. And I think the other part of it, although we've never talked about this, is it was relatively low risk given where we were at that point in time. Because if it wasn't successful, it wasn't successful. If it was successful, it was. And the experience was there. So for me, that job was about, my mission when I got to AppD was to prove that I could learn what I needed to learn. I could build the skills. I could build the relationships, the network. And you could earn your way into this thing where you'll never have to update a resume again, right? And this was the next phase in the earning my way in, and candidly gave me also the experience or more experience leading teams, because I had that from ClearSlide. And that's what I love, like building, working with people, helping people do things that they thought they couldn't do or reach heights they've never reached before. So I could see a lot of upside in it outside of the money side.
Yeah. How conscious of that were you at that point? Obviously, upon reflection, it's easy to sometimes reflect on it, but at that moment in time, how conscious were you that you were building that in your repertoire of skills?
Fairly. Okay. So like, again, going back to, and this is on the baseball side of coach I had now, always talked about doing things that make sense for what you want to do. Meaning a lot of people have a North Star and this vision of where they want to go, but they'll make decisions that don't align to that North Star for short-term gain. This job is a better title. This job pays me more money. This is in a nicer place than the middle of Michigan, whatever it might be, right? So I think I was conscious of, ultimately, I want to get back to building and leading teams. I just mentioned all of the people I had the opportunity to learn from as an IC on the West Coast. All of those relationships were still there. I can now go learn from all of these people on the East Coast and do it in a leader capacity. So to me, at that point, I also had the benefit of being early enough in my career that it was kind of like an investment in myself. Again, if it didn't work out, and I told you the story of when I was contemplating, do I take that job or not? And Tom Schmidt got involved. Yeah.
And tell us, can we talk about that? Is that?
I think we need to. This we could talk about. And I don't know if Schmidt will love it, but it's all right.
Thanks to our sponsor, Pipeline Generation AI, the platform that researches your top accounts, creates insights and assets to help you engage more effectively. Elevate your conversations and transform your pipeline with Pipeline Generation AI today.
Part of this also is like the community aspect of what we do. And I'm not a big fan of when people like call like companies like families and all of that, I think, but like we really are a community. And there's a lot to be said for the community. And every company that you go to, that community grows and grows and grows. And you get stronger and you get power in community. Now, with that said, I think what you just asked me to talk about, that also means that you do have some family and sibling type relationships. So
He's framed that very well.
so there was a little bit of a game of tug of war that had nothing to do with me between the East Coast and the West Coast. And I won't, the names don't matter, but the punchline will be worth it. And it honestly had nothing to do with me. It had to do with who could sell me on staying on which coast and who could win that game of tug of war. So ultimately, this netted with Tom calling me. And when Schmidt called me, I don't know if he'd love me saying this. The first thing he said to me is, "I have no idea why I am talking to you about this role." And I said, "Fair enough." I said, "You're, all of your children are fighting." And he goes, "Give me the details." And I go, "Well, really, it's down to like, what is my worst case?" And I'll never forget this. Schmidt said, "Your worst case is he used a different word, but screw this up. I fire you and you're out of the network forever." He goes, "No, I really need to get back to things that are way more important than this low-level RD job. So let me know if you need any help, but I think you have what you need to make the decision." So
you've moved over to the East Coast. You've decided to take this opportunity. Talk to us about where that then follows on from.
So the other part of the East Coast for me that was great was being from there. It got me back closer to family. But that 9 months, I probably learned more than I've learned in my entire life. And it was my first time stepping into a leadership role in a Playbook company. And something Mike and I talk a lot about, and we talk to like my leaders about, and all of our leaders, is there's a fine line between inspection and inspiration. There's also the difference between when do you inject tension into the team. So I actually am of the belief, and I think Mike runs similarly, when things are going well, like that's the right time to inject tension and create some friction. When things aren't going well, assuming people are doing the right things and you're looking at skill, will, and we're putting in the effort but not getting the results and all of this, it's actually a time to build up, roll up your sleeves, figure out how and figure out what. So that was the mode that we were in. We were building this thing from the ground up. We had very limited resources. It was a pilot or an experiment. So that was an incredible experience. And then that led to my next opportunity, which was Zscaler. And it was, New York was the worst or second worst performing region in the world, which should never be. So there's also, we've talked about a lot of things and decisions today, but there is an element of timing in a lot of things as well. And you can subscribe to, you make your own luck, but there's always that element there. But going over to Zscaler, we had to go rebuild that whole region from the ground up. So you think about the experience that I just took. We talked a little bit about, like hiring and the impact. We knew a lot of really good people that could come in and could help, one, get things off the ground, and then two, also be like eyes, ears, and help in the field. So you think about the impact, the network, and having these people that can come over that you work well with, that enjoy working together.
Yeah.
That is a huge impact. So those 9 months, I think, without taking that job, without meeting those people, without learning those things, it's a very different story and experience at Zscaler.
And what role did you take there at Zscaler? Was that a first line role? Was that?
I started at Zscaler as a rep.
Yeah.
So you took a step back again?
I did. Yeah. It was a temporary step back. But yeah, so it was the same thing. But I think it's a good question because that was another time where I had to put a lot of faith in things working out and being what I was told they would be.
Yeah.
Because even if you think about coming into a company, like I took a rep package.
Yeah.
And I had a good idea of what the role was going to be, but there was some blind faith and trust in how things work out and some of the people there as well. That's a good point.
I just want to pause at this point because, again, throughout this pod, we're talking a lot about champions, right? And a lot of people are investing their time and perhaps their reputation in pulling you with them. What is it you're doing that is giving people that faith that they should champion you? What is that interaction? Tell us a little bit about that dynamic.
I think you're right, because there's two parts to that equation, right? And they both have to make sense.
Yeah.
I've always, and again, this actually goes back to advice and guidance I've gotten, going back to mentorship. When I was at J&J, it was a rotational program, which was cool because you get exposure to different industries, like even things like consumer and the retail side of the world sales. And that's where this advice came from. But you always want to add value in what you're doing. So a lot of companies will say, hey, we have a flat org, reach out and schedule time with anyone you want. Actually, I can give you a good example of this. When you do that, it's kind of on you to try to figure out how do you bring value to this person who might be 3, 4, 5 levels above you in a company who's willing to spend 30 minutes with you. Because if all you do is take, that's not a really enjoyable call. And if even you look at my time at Zscaler, when I got there, I reached out to a guy named KJ Trivedi who ran Central at Zscaler, because I heard KJ did a good job and he'd been there for a long time and I wanted to learn from him. We had a great conversation. Like, he gave me a ton. I gave him like this much, right? But enough that he was like, okay, this wasn't a total waste of my time. And 2 months later, he ends up running the East at Zscaler. Now he's Mike's boss, right? There's another example with Alex Verrill, where when Verrill started at Zscaler, I had heard that there was nobody operationally better than Alex. And Dolly said amazing things about Alex, and Mike did. So I reached out and I put time on his calendar. And again, he helped me with like a million things, and I gave him 2 or 3 tidbits just having been there. And then 2 quarters later, he's running sales for the Americas. So I didn't like put time on their calendar because I thought, hey, they might be in those roles someday. But I think to your point, like trying to help and trying to add value, because it is a two-sided equation. You can't always, it's like building champions with a customer. You can't withdraw from an account that has no deposits in it.
But we're not just talking about visibility, right? You're reaching out to these individuals. Why? Because you want to learn? What is it? Why were you reaching out to them?
Because I always say that I was born with no tangible like skills. So I try to learn from others. I'm fascinated. When you guys were setting this stuff up today, I was like, I never thought about all of the things that go into like, where's a microphone placed, or so
where's stupid lights placed?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and the reflection on the TV.
Where's the reflection? Yeah. So I don't know. I've just that's probably a piece of like how I was raised. That's probably why I've annoyed so many people in my life with the millions of questions that I ask. But I've always wanted to understand, and if there's someone who's doing something better than you, doing something different than you, someone that is wired differently and thinks differently, like I always want to know what's working for them. Why are they thinking that way?
I want to take this opportunity to ask you all very kindly to go and hit the subscribe button. Whether you're on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, it will mean the world to us if you could hit that subscribe button.
I want you to just step out of yourself and maybe just reflect on, how do you think the fact that you're being proactive in this way and you've got this approach, how do you think that was being received, and how do you think that was maybe forging your reputation within Zscaler amongst, because they're obviously talking.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it does depend on the person, because there are some people in the world that would say, what are you doing reaching out to me? And when we start to think about like, how do you forge your own style? Like, we run as flat as you can run. And like, I'll give time to anyone. Obviously there's not an unlimited amount of time in the world, but so I think like you learn kind of who you want to be and who you don't want to be. That didn't answer your question though, so I will answer your question. I think the answer to your question is like it can't hurt. Like exposure, the exposure is important is the short answer to your question. And then I come back to, if I think about the things that we're supposed to do as leaders and how do we empower and enable our team, it also becomes part of our job as leaders to do that for the people that are on our team. So how do you give them an audience? How do you, whether it's sharing a win on an all hands call or being a part of boot camp when you're doing new hire, or encouraging them to reach out or bridging those connections. I do think it helps in terms of what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go in addition to the learning. And it's also something that everyone is capable of doing. So as leaders, it's our job, especially with our really like high potential people, if they're not doing that, to make sure they're doing it. And if they're doing it, to give them the air cover. So they kind of get that extra boost and push.
Going back to the point in time, you're obviously at Zscaler, you've taken on this region, which is the second, if not the most underperforming region. You've taken this sales role. Fast forwarding that, where did you get that to?
We were the number one region in the world, I think, at Zscaler every year that I was there. And again, some of it was timing because we had a huge market opportunity based on what I just told you. But I think the people, this is well known in our world. And when
100%.
you think about, but you could be a not great leader and have amazing people and do okay. And you could be the best leader on the planet Earth and have really bad people and you're going to be in trouble. So I'm not saying the goal is to not be a good leader, but I think the people that we were able to hire, obviously the program that we were able to put in and the process, but those go hand in hand, helped us get off the ground. And then for a company that sells a product that enables remote work, there was also a little pandemic in the middle of that. Didn't hurt.
Yeah, and I think this is the point which we wanted to get to, which is at this stage you've at this point in your career you've never taken a job because of the technology, you've never taken a job because of the money per se, you've never taken a job because you've only run towards great people and an opportunity to learn. And, this groundswell of doing that is now elevating you up. And obviously you're now coaching amazing people, hiring the best of talent. We know that, you look at the East Coast and what talent came out of Zscaler and where that talent is now is kind of a huge impact. Right. And I think, all of those elements starting to combine is really kind of like we're getting to the point of why we wanted to follow your story, right? And it is truly remarkable. So I suppose the point at that stage is now you spoke about your transitioning from sales, into a Playbook company and now being a lot more consciously competent around your skills. As a leader now, you've seen the benefit that it's done for you. So you've now built those external, champions above you. I am getting to a point, don't worry. But now the champions below, right? And that groundswell, and you're now starting to use that as part of your playbook and how you bring good people in. Help us understand now how this all rounds as part of your playbook and, how you...
And just before we go there, I think you're right there's more than just the opportunity and the jersey that you're wearing. However, I think the power, again, in the community, you look at someone like Dolly. Look at Dolly's track record. So who's going to be better at picking their next company, Dolly or me? Right? Probably Dolly.
Yep.
So I think you end up at companies that have great products with unbelievable market fits. They may or may not need some fine tuning in some areas. But actually the power of the network and everything we talked about kind of leads you to have the opportunity. And it's not just the story for Dolly and the companies he's at. There's tons of people that you all know that have sat in this chair and have talked about that. So I think that's a really important piece of it. And if you look at Wiz, it's the best product, the best market fit of any company ever. And the amount of people that were there when I got there, and when some of the other folks got there, that were incredible people that will probably be with us for a really long time, if they so choose and or need to be. But that's kind of the cool part of this whole thing is the power of the network is it typically lands you in a place that is a good opportunity. And then as you get there, you meet people and it grows and grows and grows and grows. So I just wanted to, there is, because you need to have a product.
Yep.
Right? You need to have a market fit.
Yeah.
And then you put the go-to-market engine behind it. And some of the products we sold are better than others.
Yeah.
But yeah.
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 The loyalty between you though, you know, you and, you know, your family, you know, you don't like to necessarily refer to it as that, but it is, you know, your community that you've built and the team that you put, you know, it's known, right? That everybody will run through a brick wall for you guys, right? And that's, you know, that's above and below you, right? And so, you know, that's a really important part. Why, you know, based upon what we've learned now and the reflection of that and the playbook that we've spoken about, how and why is that?
You can kind of go two ways when you're that close. So as you get closer to people that you work with, well, actually, I'm going to go a step backwards real quick. So I think the interesting thing is that should feel like it's not an inclusive thing and it's hard to break into.
Yeah.
However, while it might seem intimidating, it actually makes it welcoming, because when you do treat each other almost like you are siblings, and you can take shots at each other, and it doesn't matter if you're on a public all hands or like nothing is off limits in terms of like who's talking to who and who's making fun of each other and all of that.
Yeah.
It actually kind of creates a welcoming environment and atmosphere, which only helps us get towards the mission faster when we're working and when we're building. I think the second piece to it is where that could go wrong is if you have this world where you all are kind of close knit, you've done this for a long time. The concern would be like complacency or blind spots, things like that. And everyone has blind spots, and I think we all balance each other out well. But what I think is really interesting about this group of people is it actually makes it easier to go the other way. You could say whatever you want to a brother or sister, right? And they might get mad at you, but they'll get over it because you're brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So the level of direct and candid feedback that we can give is because of this whole kind of, you know, community, you know, family type atmosphere and environment. And then I think that also fosters a good environment because it continues to grow, because how do you build someone's trust? Typically you're open and honest with them and you tell them what they need to hear to be successful. And that becomes the culture that you build, which then again, everywhere you go, the network gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
There's an important aspect though, and I just really want to clarify this, because there is still meritocracy within this environment. And so, you know, we don't want it to sound as though it's cliquey and, you know, you're looking after your buddy, because no one is a buddy. And just tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's an important aspect.
The root of everything you do is accountability.
Yeah.
And we hold people accountable and we're held accountable. And by the way, that doesn't matter if, like, I'll use Mike or Dolly, for example. If you've worked for Mike or Dolly for 7 years or 3 minutes and you do something that was not something that you should have done, or you're not accountable for your actions, or you don't execute in a way that it would be expected that you execute, you're going to hear about it, and you're going to hear about it all the same. And the impact that could or could not have on what's next and all of that is the same. So I think you're right. It is very much a meritocracy. I think the relationships actually allow you to be more open, more honest, more direct. I also think it's interesting because you also create this world where people are comfortable with, like, you might work for someone today and they might work for you someday, and vice versa. And again, it's more about the greater good in the community and the impact that it has, which then also creates, again, this more inclusive environment.
There's obviously some transparency around, you know, the roles that you play, but, you know, listening in to how you talk, but also seeing your interactions with Mike and your team, etc. You know, there doesn't appear to be a hierarchy. You know, there doesn't, you know, or at least, as I said, it doesn't come across that way when I see the interactions.
Yeah, and I think, so one of the things that you were talking about is, you know, Mike always talks about hiring really good people.
Yeah.
Like if I look across my leadership team, you know, I have Zach Schultz, I have Michelle Bovey, I have Brian Spoljaric and Trevor Mellon.
It's all right.
So like,
It's all right.
So like, I mean, we were joking about it last night, but like sometimes it feels like, hey, I can just wait around until they need me to approve something, or, you know, go unstick a rock internally. So those teams, if you hire really good people and great people, they hire great people, it kind of makes the whole thing work.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I said, it just doesn't appear to be that hierarchy, and it's amazing when you talk and you hear about it, because Mike's always like, I'd go and work for Goodmark any
Well, he
day
said,
of the week.
I'm going to work for Goodmark one day. He said it 4 times yesterday.
Yeah, he was feeling very kind at that point.
I hope not.
So we speak to a lot of, aspiring leaders, aspiring candidates that are trying to kind of elevate their way through and they're overlooked for promotions, or, perhaps they're joining an organisation where they don't have the right champions because they're not focusing. What advice would you give to that group of individuals that do have ambition? What should they be thinking about?
I do think who you work for, meaning who you directly work for, is one of the most important things anywhere. So that's advice. But in general, I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to use the names. I don't know if he would enjoy me using the name, but there was an AE who I worked with for a long time at our last company. Interviewed for an RD job against another internal candidate, didn't get the job. The number of people when that happened who would kind of pick up their ball and go home, either pack it in or go to the next company or take the next title somewhere else. Instead, this person asked what they need to do and what responsibility could we give them to go build it, and work to fill in their gaps, work to contribute to the team beyond the role that they're in, and ultimately now is an RD and does still work with us and has built the skill set and maybe even a little bit of a chip. That's a good chip right on the shoulder. So that's a great example of not thinking through the lens of short term and bailing. The other thing I'll say, especially the first time you're going into a leadership role, you need people above you that will protect you. And again, this is not that you get a free pass, but your first time in roles, whether it's your first time as a first line, second line, third, fourth, you're going to mess things up. And when you mess things up, will the people above you in the org tell you what you did wrong and why you did it wrong, and if it's something that can't happen again, it can't happen again, but also coach, develop you, and have your back? Or will they roll you right under the bus when it comes out? And I think that a lot of times people undervalue. It's why when you said, Mike said, he'd work for me, I said, no, thank you. I love working for Mike, because Mike and I know each other's strengths and weaknesses. We know that we can trust each other and we have each other's backs. And to me, that's the most important thing. And a lot of times when people jump at a role, they don't look at who's my direct boss, who's their direct boss, what is that leadership chain going to look like? And when I inevitably mess something up, and I told you I mess things up all the time, what is the outcome going to be?
So when you're looking at the organisation below you, and you're obviously, as a team, as a group, you're all elevating, what are the things that you're looking for when you're kind of identifying who the potential leaders or future influencers could be?
Yep.
What are the things that you're really looking out for in that?
Yeah.
And how proactive are you with seeking that all the time?
Yep. So a couple things. So one, I think looking at external candidates is a good thing. Going back to your question about, is it still a meritocracy, or your point that it was, comparing internal and external candidates is really important. I think tie goes to the internal candidate, but just in general, when you're looking at, this role is open or it might be open, comparing what you have to what's out there is a really good thing. You also find a lot of really good people that way. And again, talking about, growing the network that comes there. In terms of for the promotion path, it kind of comes back to the story of do the job that you want before you have it. So what are the individuals doing in the job that they're in that shows that they're ready for the next job? And depending on if it's AE to RD or RD to RVP, right, those things would be different. But for example, if an AE is looking to become an RD, how do they work with the internal ecosystem of the company? And if I were to go ask the legal team, the finance team, the deal desk team, the operations team, what do they think of this person? Do they have a relationship with this person? Would they promote them? would they promote them or not? Because when you become an RD, your job is to remove obstacles for your team. You become as much as an internal champion builder as an external champion builder. And if you couldn't do that as a rep, how are you going to do that as a leader? Do they take initiative, and like, do they have people mentoring them? Like, do they have a plan for how they're going to do the next job? Have they started building programs and things that maybe, at an RD level isn't necessarily an RD's role, that an RVP or an AVP would build? So those are some of the things. And then I do think there's the intangible aspect of it, in terms of some people kind of always find themselves, on the top of the list with high performing teams and all of this. And you can't discredit some of the, like non-0 and 1 part of, there is a art to what we do. You want to balance it obviously with the science, and there are intangibles there as well.
Mm. Yeah, so obviously these relationships are super tight, and you can see that that's part of your playbook. But where have you seen those chains or those relationships break? And once they're broken, is there ever any fixing them?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the relationship through the lens of the physical relationship, and the relationship through the lens of, I work for you or with you. And the reason I say that is, I think where the relationships blow up, it's usually ego. And we all have egos, like myself included, right, at differing degrees. I think where things typically blow up, it comes back to an ego aspect. And that could be, going back to the meritocracy comment, that could be, I need to level you with someone because I actually put you in a job that was too big for you. And you're not going to like it, but I'm actually protecting you. I'm going to put someone there that can teach you, and you'll get back there. Well, that could be super damaging to a relationship if you're really close. I think on the flip side, in terms of the going and leaving and maybe taking a different job, you can do that in a way without breaking the relationship. And I tell my team all the time, if there's something that they want to go do that is an amazing opportunity for them, and it's for the right reasons, like, I would never not support someone to go chase something or do that. And I would help them, and I would mentor them, and I would coach them. And I know Mike's the same way. There's tons of examples of people who actually maybe even didn't take a job with us at the end of an interview cycle that, we've stayed close to mentoring. So I think on the relationship side, the only way it really breaks, usually like egos get involved.
Yeah.
I think on the, can you leave and it be okay? Of course, it's like everyone has free will. And that's also why you need to continue growing and expanding the network. It's why it's important that we go to really good companies like we did, where there are really good people, where the network continues to grow. So I think those two things are kind of separate.
Yeah.
What's your end game, Dave?
It's it's a good question. So if you asked me for my end game before my time at Zscaler, I would have told you that I really would want to. If I even take a step further back, like, I always wanted to have my own business. Like, that's what I wanted to do. Like I talked about, I love building stuff. I love putting teams together. It's awesome to see something that didn't exist become. Seeing as typically salespeople don't like build amazing products and companies, my path to run a company likely would be up through the sales side of the org. And we've seen a lot of people do that. What I learned at Zscaler is I don't know that I really care what position, title, role that I hold. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it's fine. But what really excites me is being able to build these teams and being able to help and work with all of these great people and help them reach their full potential, or maybe even go further than they thought. Help them, maybe make more money or achieve whatever they didn't think that they could achieve. And then finding a way to kind of do that in a repeatable way. That's what I care about. So that was my learning at Zscaler, was I think what'll happen will happen. And if it's not, some super big title, as long as I continue to learn, I continue to grow, I continue to have an opportunity to make money, and I can continue to impact people, I really don't know that I care where I end up.
Okay, this is the point where we reflect on what's been a truly remarkable session, Dave. First of all, I want to say a massive thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for coming down and doing this here in Miami.
Mate, we'll come down to here any day, don't we, mate? If we need to re-record this, I'm sure we can come back.
Part 2 and 3 pending.
Exactly, yeah.
But we were really keen to get you on the show because your story, there are so many learnings through your story. And in particular, I think the thing that really stands out about you is that you were maniacally focused on the acquisition of knowledge and skills and surrounding yourself with the right people that can give you the skills to become better. It's this kind of this thirst for development that had really kind of forged the choices that you've made at the various points where, you know, many people, the ego may have kicked in, right? Why would I go and take an IC role? Or why would I go and take a commercial leader role in the East Coast when I'm perhaps better than that? But because you were so focused on the things that were going to help develop you and continuing to grow and put more things in your toolkit, coupled with the fact that there's no ego, it's no surprise that you're having the incredible impact that you're having right now because you have learned from some amazing people. And it's not just knowledge, it's about influence, it's about how you enable people, the right way to build culture and to create an inertia within an organization and a culture that is scalable and you're going to continue to grow. So I just want to say a massive thank you to you once again. It's been truly fascinating. It's been a long time coming, and I'm looking forward to part 2, 3, and 4.
This is very true. But yeah, we really do appreciate you coming onto the show and just sharing in your story. As Simon said, I think, you know, the learnings from your story are so important. And, you know, we try to educate people when they come to advice on career moves, etc. And, you know, the biggest advice that we ever give is follow the right person, right? Build, you know, fundamentally following the right people is going to get you to where you need to get to. Stop thinking about that next job promotion. Stop thinking and rushing those promotions as well, because at the end of the day, it will happen naturally from a groundswell from building champions beneath you, and then also the pull from building champions above you. And I think your story just epitomizes absolutely everything. So yeah, we really appreciate you sharing your story, buddy.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So to all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe to our various channels on iTunes, YouTube, and Spotify. All the links will be in the description below, and we look forward to welcoming you back for another session very soon. Take care and goodbye.